morning is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. This is again, we are reading for 3 weeks in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, and this is another one of Jesus' parables. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who was leaving on a trip. He called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 valuable coins, to another 2, to another 1, each according to that servant's ability. Then he left on his journey. The one who had received the 5 valuable coins took them and went to work doing business with them. He gained 5 more. In the same way, the one who had the 2 valuable coins gained 2 more. But the servant who had received the 1 valuable coin dug a hole in the ground and buried his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 valuable coins came forward, bringing 5 more coins, saying, "Master, you handed over to me 5 valuable coins. Look, I have gained 5 more." His master replied, "Excellent. You are a good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will put you in charge of more. Come, celebrate with me." The second servant also came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 valuable coins. Look, I have gained 2 more." His master replied, "Well done. You are a good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will put you in charge of more. Come, celebrate with me." Now the man who had received the 1 valuable coin came and said, "Master, I know that you are a hard man. You harvest grain where you have not sown. You gather crops where you have not spread seed. So I was afraid, and I hid your valuable coin in the ground. Here you have what is yours." His master replied, "You evil and lazy servant. You knew that I harvest grain where I haven't sown, and that I gather crops where I haven't spread seed. In that case, you should have turned my money over to the bankers, so that when I returned, you could give me what belonged to me with interest. Therefore, take from him the valuable coin and give it to the one who has 10 coins. Those who have much will receive more, and they will have more than they need. But as for those who don't have much, even the little bit will be taken away from them. Now take the worthless servant and throw him outside into the darkness. People there will be weeping and grinding teeth." This is the word of God for the people of God. You may be seated. As I shared with our 9:30 service, this is another parable, and a parable is a fancy word for a story that Jesus tells that has a meaning. And as I looked at the various commentaries this week and tried to begin to understand the different meanings and nuances of this parable, I realized that there are all kinds of understandings about what we ought to think about this parable. And there are some scholars that say this, and there are some scholars that say that, and there are some scholars that contradict each other about what is the meaning that Jesus had for this parable. And so when I read parables, I need to remind myself, and I need to remind you that parables are kind of like peeling an onion. There are all kinds of layers to the parable and all kinds of understandings and nuances of reading a parable. I also am reminded of the story about of the elephant in the village. How many of you heard the story of the elephant in the village? Some of you have, perhaps. The story of the elephant in the village goes like this. Once upon a time, doesn't every good story begin like that? Once upon a time, there were 6 blind men in a village, and one day the villagers came to them and said to them, "Hey, there's an elephant in the village. There's an elephant in the village." And so they had no idea what an elephant was, and so they decided together that they would go and see what an elephant was. They'd go and not go and see, they would go and touch the elephant and find out what an elephant was. And so every one of them went to the elephant, and they began touching the elephant. And one man said, "Hey, the elephant is like a pillar. The elephant is like a pillar because you see he was touching the elephant's leg." And there was another man that said, "Oh no, the elephant is like a rope. And you see he was touching the elephant's tail." And then there was another man who was touching the And then there was a man that was passing by, and he saw this, and he stopped and he asked them, "What is the matter? What's the matter?" They said, "We cannot agree on what an elephant is." And the man was a wise man, and you see, and he listened to them, and each one of them told them what they thought the elephant was like, and the wise man calmly explained to them, "All of you, every single one of you are right. All of you are right. The reason every one of you is telling me something different is that each one of you have touched a different part of the elephant. So actually the elephant has all of these features, just like all of you said." And the point, the reason I'm sharing that story is that Jesus' parables are often very complex stories and can be understood and read from lots of different perspectives. Looking at it this way or looking at it that way can bring lots of different meanings and lots of different understandings. There are many layers to Jesus' parables, and this is certainly one of those parables that's like that. Even the translations, the various translations and the various versions of the English Bible have translated this parable differently. The way that we read it today, we talked about three men who had each been given coins by the master. The three men had been given 5 coins and 2 coins and 1 coin. But if you read some texts, you see that the translation talks about talents. Another talks about, ours talks about coins. Another, the Message, talks about $1,000, $2,000, and $5,000. So what is it? Even the reading, even the translations are confusing to us. Well, you need to know in New Testament times, the Greek word that is translated in our text today as coins is actually a word that the word is talent. And a talent in Jesus' day was a coin, a Greek coin of great value. And just like a nickel or a dime or a quarter, a talent was a coin. And it was a coin of great value. And so in our modern day word of talent actually comes from this parable. And this ancient Greek word that is often translated in this text as talent. That was referred to in our text this morning as a coin. Some commentators say, well, it's worth as much as $5,000. There are other commentators that say, well, a talent was actually worth as much as 15 years of a laborer's wages. 15 years of the wages of labor. Either way, a talent is a coin of great value. Does it matter how much it is? No, it doesn't. Today's reading is our second reading of a parable in the Gospel of Matthew in the 25th chapter. You may remember last week we talked about bridesmaids and a bridegroom and how some bridesmaids brought enough oil for their lamps and some did not. And then we talked about the reading and understanding of that particular parable. For us today, maybe the parable talks to us about how to invest, that we need to invest our money wisely. If we're going to, we at least need to put our money in the bank where we can get some interest. But the reality is this story really talking to us about money? I'm not sure that it is. You see, money is the illustration that Jesus uses. It's the illustration. But surely there's much deeper meaning than cash or bank balances or all of this. Sometimes we interpret this story, and when we talk about talents, as how Jesus is talking about the gifts and the abilities that God has given us, the skills that God has given us, each one of us. And maybe it's talking about using our talents well, and how if we use our talents well, good things happen. Right? Is that what it's all about? Perhaps it is. But if we leave our talents unused, if we don't exercise our talents, then they atrophy and we end up out in the cold. But what I want to propose to you today is that perhaps this parable is more about accountability and responsibility. It's about taking our resources and putting them to good use. It's about using our resources for the growth of God's kingdom. But as we kind of think about that, let me share with you a couple of thoughts about have been entrusted, all that we have has been entrusted to us for a time. Everything that we have has been entrusted to us. All of us are wealthy, and we're all wealthy because God has given all of us gifts and resources and things that make us who we are. And all of us have wealth. And that wealth is entrusted to us for a time. One of the things that I am called to do as your pastor from time to time is to visit with families who are dealing with the death of a loved one. I did that this past week. I was visiting with one of our Crossroad client families who lost a daughter. Their daughter had been born premature, and she had been born premature, and she lived for 4 months. And so today at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we will be gathering together as family and friends to give thanks for her life among us. And we'll be committing her remains to God. And as I was visiting with the family this week and I was talking with them, I shared with them the words, as I often do, the words that are in that committal part of the service there in the book of worship. And the words go like this. And I'm going to use the name of their baby. They named the baby Miracle. Miracle, they named her Miracle because she was born premature and they really didn't expect her to live long even after birth, but she lived for 4 months. And so they named her Miracle, and over those 4 months they loved her and they cared for her. But I shared with them the words in the book of worship. They go like this. Eternal God, you have shared with us the life of Miracle. Before she was ours, she was yours. For all that Miracle has given to us to make us what we are. And for that, a miracle that lives and grows in each of us, we give you thanks. It goes on to say, as we now offer Miracle back to you, I could share more with you, but the point is this. All that we have and all that we are has been entrusted to us for a time. All that we have and all that we are has been entrusted to us for a time, from the day that we're born until the day when we die. All that we are and all that we have has been entrusted to us for a time. God entrusts us with what we have and gives it to us to use for the good of God's kingdom for a time. We don't know how long that time is, do we? As I shared with the 9:30 service, I'm glad I made it, but as I shared with the 9:30 service, I could die on the way to the sanctuary this morning, and Lyanna would have to preach. It might be a little upsetting to you folks, maybe. Well, I hope it will be upsetting. But the bottom line is we have no idea when life will end for us. What we do know is that all that we are and all that we have has been entrusted to us by God for a time. And even if I contract a life-ending illness, I will not know the actual day, an actual moment when my life will end. But I do know this. God has entrusted to me the gifts, the resources, the abilities that I have for a time, for a period of time. They are lent to me. They are lent to me to use while I am here on this earth. I cannot take them with me. Now, I know some folks want to do that, but you can't take it with you, folks. You can't take it with you. They are mine to use for this life and for this time. Here's another thing. What we have has been entrusted to us according to our own ability. The scripture was talking about that the master gave to the servants 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent, each according to their own ability. And I think what that means to me is that God gives us what we need to manage and take care of what God has entrusted to us. And we have the skills and the capabilities to take care of what God has given us. God gives each of us the ability to handle and to manage the gifts that we have given. So what are we to do? I think what we're to do is to be faithful with what we have been given. To use our gifts, to use our gifts for the growth of God's kingdom. And then what did the story tell us? What did Jesus say that the master did when they came and they discovered that they had more gifts? They celebrated. They celebrated. And I think that's what we are invited to do. We are invited to use God's gifts for the growth of God's kingdom and then celebrate with God. And that's what we do in worship, is we celebrate with God. One of the talents buried the money. One of the servants buried the money. Buried the money. Is that something that we do, some of us? Could it be that we bury our faith, and we bury our relationship with God, or at least we tuck it away in some hidden place and we bring it out on Sundays to use when we're in church with other people like us who think like us, or maybe we pull it out in emergency situations? Or is there another option? Is there another option that we might use the gifts that God has given us to transform the world around us? Who are we called to be as a church? We are the church of Jesus Christ. We are called to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And so God has given each of us, not just your pastors, but God has given each of us gifts that all of us can use to transform the world around us, to make the world around us a better place. Is our faith life more about safety and security and all of those things? Or is our faith life about courage and openness? Are you willing to let the gospel loose in the world? Are you willing to use what God has given you to bring blessing and to grow God's kingdom around you? Every single day, all of us go out in the world. We interact with people. We touch the lives of people around us and interact with the world. Are we using the gifts that God has given us to make the world around us better? I know many of you are. But I want to encourage you to be thinking about how you can do that every single day. How can you put God's gifts into circulation in the world? Remember, all that we have has been entrusted to us for a time. All that we have has been entrusted to us for a time. And what we have has been entrusted to us according to our ability. And God gives us the skills and the gifts that we need to manage those gifts. But God also calls us to use those gifts for the growth of God's kingdom. So the challenge for us is to be bold with courage and to faithfully utilize those gifts in a way that will grow God's kingdom around us. So here's what I'd like to invite you to do as an assignment this week. I'd like to invite you, each one of you, to make a commitment. First, you have to be aware of the gifts that God has given you, but my hunch is many of you know what gifts God has given you. But make a commitment to grow and to share those gifts that God has given you. And to use them that the world around you might be transformed. You know, if all of us begin to use those gifts around us and to touch the world around us with those gifts that God has given us, the world will be a better place, my friends, and we will make a difference. We will make a difference.